Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Power Over Tomorrow. I'm your host and resident financial advisor, Tyrone T.S. Mitchell, and we are coming to you courtesy of T.S. Mitchell Financial, LLC, your independent and trusted registered investment advisor, specializing in wealth management for your insurance, investment, tax planning, and financial planning needs. We also want to continue to welcome you to visit our website at tsmitchell.com. Once again, tsmitchell.com. Please continue to download our free financial app to your Android and Apple phones, as well as sign up for our monthly financial newsletters that go directly to your email, and keep informed. That's the purpose of Power Over Tomorrow, is to enable you to have educated information so that you can make an educated decision concerning your family, your future, and your finances. And we wish to thank you and thanks to our sponsors for helping make this show possible. Our sponsors are Zelina Health, Wellness, and Fitness, Paper to Film Productions, Revolution Mills, and Renovations. Thank you, sponsors, for helping continue to support this effort that we have here on SRN Live TV. Source Radio, Source Nation. Once again, we have a topic that we want to share with you today. And that topic is something that many of you have asked about. And this is something that we continuing to see occur throughout this life of ours. And that is the economics of education. The economics of education. Now, some may say, well, why is that a factor? Why is that necessary? Well, the bottom line is this. We are living in a time where it is not necessarily a segregation based upon ethnicity. No, while that is one factor, but the other factors would be ethics, all right? So you have education, you have ethnicity, ethics, and the other area would be economics and also education. These are the factors that are building a system of haves and have-nots here in this country, in your community, and when we look at it on a grand scale, even globally, as we say, around the world. 4 key factors. We said ethics, economics, ethnicity, and education. We're talking about today the economics of education, the money behind the higher aspects of higher education. The reason why this is important, and at least from this perspective of Power Over Tomorrow, is because when we look at the cost of education, one does not need to have a degree in finance or a degree in economics to see the cost of college continuing to rise. Cost of college continues to rise. There was a report done by the College Board back in 2017. And the report showed that a public four-year institution raised its prices on an average of 3.2% annually between 2007 and 2017. Now, let's take that. It grew 3.2% annually. So 1 year, let's say you had $100. Well, this is what we call compounding interest. It not only grew 3.2% on the $100. This is an example of compounding interest. 3.2% on the $100. The following year, that 3.2% becomes $103.20. Then the next year, the 3.2% is not on the original $100, but on the 103.2 is multiplied by another 3.2%. And then the third year, you add the 3.2% onto what? The 103.2 plus the 3.2, and it keeps growing. That's compounding interest. It is built upon the original plus each and every balance of each year. It compounds. Simple interest, and the reason why I want to specify the difference between compounding and simple interest is always based on the original amount. So if we go back to the original amount, I wish I had my calculator, but we want to give you an example, and you're going to do homework because you're going to go to our website, TS Mitchell Financial, and go to our calculator section and see and understand the difference between simple and compounding interest. Simple interest says the amount is $100, and each and every year is $3.20. Each and every year. It doesn't change. The balance doesn't change, and as the balance goes down, yes, the interest rate goes down too, because it's always based on the outstanding balance. But in compounding interest, it continues to accumulate each and every year. The reason why I point that out is this. When we talk about saving, putting money aside, oftentimes folks will say, well, I don't want to take a risk. I want to be very conservative. That's fine, depending upon your time frame. Because sometimes you can be so conservative that you miss out on growth potential. When we are speaking about college education, now I'll say this before we get too far down the road. It is never too late to start, but the sooner you start, the better. Some folks at this time of the year are beginning to prepare to send their child off to college. Some are preparing their children for high school, middle school, junior high, or grade school, or even some are just preparing for the birth of that newborn. But the key factor is planning is essential. I believe it was Zig Ziglar that once said that people don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan. Well, when we talk about the economics of education, the focus is on letting folks know, and not just the parents and grandparents, letting our children know that there's a cost to be the boss. In other words, if you want to go to school, if you want to get that higher education that we want you to strive for, you must take it. You must take the understanding, grab hold of it as if it's your last breath. Grab hold of the fact that you need to understand the economics of getting in higher education. The economics behind education is not just, I will say this, is when I say behind the education, is the foundation of it. The foundation of it, because before you, behind you, around both sides of you, above you and under you, is always going to be a cost factor. So you are 360 degrees surrounded by the cost factor. That's important to understand, ladies and gentlemen. The economics of education teaches us that when we place that dream in our children's head, we want you to get an education. We want you to get an education. We should not limit that dream to just college. Why do I say that? Because there are many folks who have been successful in life without necessarily having a college degree. While you having a college degree will improve your understanding when it comes to how to do certain things in that profession, it is not solely the only avenue to give success. See, education is knowing about what you're doing. When you step out in the world and you get hit smack dab in the middle of your forehead with reality, that's an education. Mother once told me that any man can learn from his own mistakes. She told me that's an education. But it takes a wise man to learn from the mistakes of others. That's an education. Remember the story that I told once before, and if you heard it already, just hold on tight. Guess what? I'm going to tell it again because it's just so appropriate for what we're talking about. The story is the young man is in the boat with his father and his grandfather. Grandpa gets out the boat, walks across the water, gets what he needs, comes back across the water, gets back in the boat. Dad gets out the boat, walks across the water, gets what he needs, walks back across the water, gets back in the boat. The young man, seeing Daddy and Grandpa do it, decided he's too going to get out the boat. So he stepped out on the water, began to walk, and immediately he began to sink and start to drown. Both Grandpa and Dad reached down, pulled him out of the water, and said, "Son, what were you thinking?" He said, "Daddy, I saw you and Grandpa do it. I thought I could do it too." And they put a hold on his shoulder and slowly turned him around and said, "Son, you need to know where the stones are." See, when you step out there, when we send our children out there, when we lead by example, the education that they must have is that they must know where the stones are. When we teach our children, get that education, we have to talk to them about the economics of the education. Why? Because those stones, if they are not careful, can become stumbling blocks. Setting our children up for a dream, but don't set them up for a failure. Prepare them, teach them, educate them on the cost of education, the economics of it. So we said that that report that was given by the College Board in 2017 talked about college growing at the cost of college growing at 3.2% annually. And the example would be this: in 2007, if someone had put away $5,000 for a college expense, well, now in 2017, all right, in the year for the college year 2017, 2018, that $5,000 expense for the college year of 2007, 2008. Now in 2017, 2018, that same $5,000 expense, because it grew at a 3.2% annually, it now costs $6,851 for the same college expense 10 years ago. Economics of education is that money is going to take them, is going to be needed to take them to school, and money is going to be needed to keep them in school, and money is going to be needed to take them to their careers and their lives after school. It's economics. And right now, when we think about the things that are occurring in the current administration of this here United States, it was said that the current Republican Party, and I understand that, some of you, regardless of your political position, the economics is still the same. Inflation is the same whether you are Republican, Democrat, independent, communist, or whatever you espouse to be. Inflation is still the same. They don't have one inflation rate for this party and one inflation rate for that party. But what they do have is opportunity. Get this? Is opportunity to get the information, utilize the information, and grow with the information. When we have the opportunity, we must seize it and grow with it. I once did a speech, matter of fact, a sermon called Works of the Working Worker. Works of the working worker. And what I meant to say, and what I say is this, is that works, or the word work, comes from a root word, work. We put an S on a root word to make it plural. We put an ER on a root word to make it personal. and we put an ing on a root word to make it active. So when we talk about works of a working worker, we are talking about that root word work, and not to get off on a different tangent, because to send our children to college, yeah, it's going to take some work. It's going to take some work mentally and financially. Well, let's take that word work and use it as an acronym. WORK. W. There has to be a willingness to understand the economics of education. When we are willing to understand the economics of education, we will begin to look for avenues to help offset that cost. You know, few families can afford the lion's share of education and its cost straight out of their pockets. So in the case that we see is that many parents and grandparents, they will take on a level of financial responsibility to help that child or those children get that education that they seek. Now, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But generally, the majority of people, the majority of families rely on a combination of things. They rely on scholarships, grants, financial aid, part-time jobs, and support from family members to help pay for the cost of education. When we are willing to see all aspects of the economics of education, we begin to open our eyes. Our eyes will begin to open up to see how this is going to be. Now, let's take some of these combinations. And we said scholarships. Ladies and gentlemen, understand this. Our children may not fully comprehend the aspects of what a scholarship is. That's why it behooves us to lead by example and to teach them what a scholarship is. And for us to truly understand scholarships when it comes to college education, let's liken it to your job. On your job, if your boss or your employer says, there's overtime, all right, you work overtime. But one thing you know about overtime is that it's what? It is not guaranteed. If your employer says, we're having a good year, we're in the third quarter of the year, and we expect to be able to give a bonus, but we just need you to keep working hard so we can finish this year, finish it off strong. You know that is a dream, or sometimes it's an opportunity or an incentive. That's what I'm speaking. It's an incentive to continue to work hard, but that incentive is not necessarily an entitlement or something that's going to be guaranteed. Bonuses are not guaranteed on your job. Overtime is not guaranteed on our jobs. We need to share this type of understanding with our children so they understand that scholarships are not guaranteed when it comes to college, because scholarships will have its parameters, and they will have the measures that they must meet. For you on your job to be able to get overtime, you have to do regular time. So you just can't come on your job and say, okay, I'm not going to show up for work from 9 to 5, and get paid regular pay, then show up on your job to do overtime to get paid time and a half. Nah, partner, it doesn't work like that. You have to make the minimum base number of hours before payroll starts calculating overtime pay. You can work like this. If you are scheduled to work 40 hours a week, all right, and you work 5 days a week, so that's an average of 8 hours, a day. So if on one day you work 10 hours, on the second day you work 10 hours, on the third day you work 10 hours, just because you exceeded the average eight hours a day, you still have yet to reach the full leverage to hit overtime pay. See, overtime doesn't come in till after the full amount of base pay number of hours have been reached. And if you do not reach overtime pay until 40 hours are accumulated, all right, then that doesn't come in until you reach 40 hours. And the reason why I say that is because of this. Many scholarships have a minimum requirement. And oftentimes our children miss out on the scholarships because they don't understand the economics of education. They understand that, hey, I want to go to school, and you know, and mom and dad, they got a good job, all right, they got a good career, they're professionals, we've seen them go through college or put one of our brothers and sisters, other family members. So hey, the money should be there. You know, my father told me a long time ago, money doesn't grow on trees, and it doesn't. You know, Dad's right, because you know why? We may call it paper. Now, some they say, well, you know, paper grows on trees, but hey, be mindful, ladies and gentlemen. You know, here on Power Over Tomorrow, we tell the truth about money. And the truth is that money is not made out of paper. Now, I had some money somewhere. Hold on a second. Let me find that thing I call a wallet, and let me check and see if my wife put my allowance in my pocket today. Oh, here it is. Here it is. That's just $1. All right. Now, look. But this is not made of paper. All right. Although we can fold it and everything else, the American currency is made of cotton. That's right. Where is it? Right there. Right behind me. Right there. Let me get it. This here. Cotton. The American currency is made of cotton. And remember that program I did, Are You Still a Slave to Cotton? You know, it was a play on terms. You know, we came out of the cotton field working hard for many folks picking cotton. And I've said this many times before, is that within one generation, my family went from picking cotton in the fields to picking stocks on the market, from sharecroppers to shareholders. The American dream is what you make it. So I say this to you today, that the American currency is not made of paper. So yes, Dad, you're right. Money doesn't grow on trees, but it's made of 70% cotton and 30% linen. That's right, 70% cotton and 30% linen. Still till this day, many folks may find themselves not knowingly enslaved to the dollar, enslaved to cotton. But that's another show, and we'll talk about that. All right. But when we speak about the economics of education, sometimes our children just don't understand that when you miss out on that grade point average, you're missing out on money. You're missing out on money. And that money that you're missing out on because of that scholarship level is that money that you was looking for to get you in college. Many many states will have a lottery system, and they promote the lottery system as a way to help fund for in-state tuition payments for colleges. They say if you go to college, you can apply for this certain type of scholarship or a certain type of grant, and it's often funded by playing the lotto. So what happens is that many folks miss out on that money just because when they were in high school, they didn't put forth that extra effort to get that 3.0 average. And when they're in college, you got to recognize the fact, parents and children, you have to recognize the fact that colleges do not pay for C's. They don't want C's. They want A, B's. And those who are performing on the A and B level, see the B level, if you want to be in the game, you have to have a B level academic. You have to have a 3.0, not a 2.95, not a 2.999, but a 3.0. That's the minimum level for many scholarships out there. And oftentimes they miss out on it. And the reason why we said scholarships are not guaranteed is because when they miss that grade level, they have to get it and maintain it. And when they miss it, that money is lost. That's on the academic side. Some folks say, well, my child is a great athlete. They're going to get a full ride scholarship to college. They're a great athlete. Boy, girl, they're going to get it. Okay, they get that scholarship while they're going to college. Then, depending upon what school they're going to, what measure of sport they may be in, or let's say, for instance, they get an academic scholarship, and now they're under the thumb of the NAACP. Not NAACP. I'm sorry, that's the other gradation. I mean NCAA. All right, all these alphabets sometimes they get mixed up. But look, some of them are already messed up. But here, the NCAA, they're under the thumb of the NCAA. How many times have we heard that someone went out to a business meeting, or they went someplace with a booster or a donator to the college, and they had a meal, or that that person gave them some sneakers or something, whatever the case may be, and then they lose their entire scholarship. Scholarships are not guaranteed. And when we think of the economics of academics and athletics when it comes to education, now, I've often said this. Why is it that someone who has an academic scholarship can go to a $1,000 plate dinner with the CEO of a firm and then still maintain their academic scholarship? But then someone at the same school goes and gets a Happy Meal with the same CEO of the firm and lose the athletic scholarship. Something to think about. When we speak of the economics of education, scholarships are not guaranteed. So don't make that the crux of your planning when it comes to education. Another thing that we want to have a willingness to understand, and that is grants. Well, grants are something that's given, okay? Almost like a scholarship, but typically grants are given based upon needs, or based upon the ability to write an essay. Do you understand how much money is lost because we don't sit our children down to write a grant, to write, write an essay, or to do community work, and money is available in grants. Now, grants also are something that can come and go depending upon financial constraints and restraints of the organization. So grants are not always there. And sometimes you have to write and show yourself approved for that grant, similar to a scholarship, but it may have different criteria. Another thing that we'll have to be mindful of is financial aid. Financial aid, ladies and gentlemen, is a loan. It is. When you get that aid, when you take out financial loans, those things have to be paid back. And I venture to say this: parents and grandparents, the rules of the game has changed when it comes to financial loans. Hear me now, the rules of the game has changed. Many of us remember going to school and having our parents or seeing parents and families sign on the dotted line to help guarantee the loan will be paid back. And oftentimes we saw those loans go into default. This topic we're talking about today, the economics of education, is a key factor as we see the game of the financial aspects of this country change. It was reported recently, and I've alluded to this a little bit earlier, that under the current administration, when it was the previous administration, they talked about we got to stop the indebtedness of this country. We got to stop the deficit. We got to stop the deficit. So when the deficit was put on hold and began to diminish, now we see, because of certain tax law changes, and don't look at me funny, because you know why? You can look at me funny all you want to. Go right ahead. I do taxes. I understand. I study the tax laws, and the tax law changes that were given to a small segment of the tax-paying population will weigh heavy on the majority segment of the tax-paying population. And that small change is now being reported through the budget overseeing committee and many aspects, that we will go into $1 trillion deficit. $1 trillion deficit, highest than it's ever been in history, because of the pace and the direction we're currently moving. We, on our end, have to understand the economics of education and understand that the rules of the game has changed. The reason is because, once again, of the factors that are developing what is considered the haves and the have-nots. That gulf that is set between the haves and the have-nots are based upon what are the factors? I gave it to you. Based upon what? Ethnicity, based upon economics, based upon ethics, based upon education, and based upon, let me say economics. Let's say economics, or say, if I said it, I'll say it again. It's based upon those factors. And that's what's developing the haves and the have-nots. So if one of the factors is education, and the other factor is economics, remember 2008, 2009, which was just a decade ago. When we talk about the housing market crash and the crash of the financial industry, that was not a long time ago. And we are still finding ourselves trying to recoup from those aspects. We're setting up different laws, and when we speak about things such as the Dodd-Frank Act being removed, the restrictions on financial institutions being removed, the privatization of many financial areas. When you don't understand that the rules of the game has changed now for our children when they go to college, you're setting them up. You are setting them up for economic servitude. You're setting them up for economic bondage. You're setting them up for financial slavery. And yes, they will once again be a slave to the cotton that makes our currency. I say that because of this. If you thought the housing market crash was bad, continue to not count the cost of education. Continue to not estimate the economics of education, and what you will find. Now, I'm not here to talk about doom and gloom. What I'm here to say is this: I'm not here to make you afraid, but I'm here to make you aware that we can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results when the rules of the game has changed. And what rules might you say that be? Well, the rules on how they're going to collect their money. You get the education. The education that you get, it must be affordable and marketable. What I mean by being affordable is that you should be able to go to school within the budget that you set aside. Well, how do you do that? Well, I'm so glad you asked. You look at the cost. You know, the scriptures say, what man goes to war without counting the cost? You're going to war against ignorance. You're going to war against poverty. You're going to war against finding a job or having a career that pays you livable wages. Not minimum wages, but livable wages. When you think about this, now I'm going to go back a little bit now. Think about this. There was a time when people of color of high education could only get menial jobs. But once we began to understand a certain type of system and began to work and grow, we allowed ourselves to go into certain corporations and certain avenues that began to allow our economic base to grow. Well, for those who find themselves, who believe they have reached the pinnacle or they have overcome, well, they may not be able to change the direction for us who have already gone that path, but they can change the direction for our children. What do I mean? Is that now they make education so hard to acquire without debt. Our children, when they don't understand the economics of education, can find themselves having a six-figure debt and barely making a five-figure income. When we see the growth of jobs in this country, you have to ask yourself, what salaries or what are they providing as far as wages? If the wages that they're providing only provides enough for you just to make ends meet, that means you have to find another job. How many times have we heard that people come out of college with high-priced degrees and only able to find low-paying jobs? Or they may have 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet, but yet they still find they have too much money at the end of the money. When you think about what I'm speaking of, the cost of education or the economics of education, you have to count the cost. Your degree that you pursue must be a marketable degree. So should you rely on scholarships, grants, financial aids, and loans? By all means, I say no. They can come into the picture to help offset the cost, but you should not depend upon them. What about part-time jobs? Yes, that is something that could be there. There's nothing wrong with putting that into the picture. Now, if you are not in position to cover the cost of going to school flat out with cash, then you have to look at a combination of things. And as you're looking at a combination of things, do not, and I mean do not overlook work-study programs. Do not overlook getting an education that provides you a certificate in a trade that will allow you to make an income. Do not overlook going to junior colleges. Don't you know? And if you don't know, you're going to know now that there are many folks who can afford, and now this is a study, folks who can afford, families who can afford, CAN, afford to pay for college straight out with cash, they are encouraging their children. This is a study, and I've read this just a couple of years ago. And once I find that study again, I'll be more than happy to share it with you. They can afford to send their children to school full of, what we say, they can afford to foot the bill. But here's what they're doing. They're sending their children to junior colleges for the first 2 years to get an associate's degree. Once they acquire the associate's degree, then they transfer over to the major university or the major college. And many of the major universities and colleges will have what they call a bridge program with a local junior college. And what happens is when that student of the junior college transfers to that under the bridge program, when they finally get that undergraduate or even graduate degree, it doesn't mention anything about they came from a junior college. It's at all the credits are listed as if they went to that major school for the full 4 years. They are doing this way to save themselves $25,000, $30,000 right off the bat. And then along with that, while they're at that junior college, they get that GPA up, and guess what? Now, not only did they save themselves about $30,000 by going to a junior college as opposed to going straight to the 4-year school and doing the same classes at twice the expense, well, guess what? They have the associate's degree, or they have credits that they transfer that are fully accepted, that they don't lose money in taking classes that will not transfer. They maintain above a B average. When they come over now, if there's a lottery system that applies money toward their college tuition, guess what? Now they get another $5,000, maybe $10,000 because they kept their grades above a B level. And they apply that. So what have they done? They used education. They used their understanding of economics of education to keep themselves out of debt. So I said we're using the word work as an acronym. So I said, first, there has to be a willingness to understand. Now, O is the opportunity. We must seek opportunities to get the education at a fraction of the cost. Hear that again? The opportunity to get the education at a fraction of the cost. What are the opportunities? The opportunities could be, as we said, junior college, bridge programs with major universities, and then transfer over. Another opportunity would be online studies. Many of the colleges now will provide you with online studies or distant learning. And guess what? Then you don't have to cover the cost of room and board. Room and board is something that will, you're paying someone to basically sleep and eat. You are paying for someone to sleep and eat. If they understand or take advantage of the opportunity for distant learning, that you may not have to take out a financial aid or spend money on room and board. Just be disciplined to understand how to use the opportunity for distant learning. Going to a junior college, it offsets the cost of room and board. So now you have more money in reserve. So seek the opportunity, use the opportunities to cut the cost for the same degree. The other aspect is when opportunities come, they may not always come as you see them. So there has to be an R. And the R is resilience. Resilience is continuing to work and never give up. When you feel you've given your all, keep pushing. Don't give up, because there is still something in you. Remember now, The challenges that you face outside of your being, you have to understand you're more than a conqueror. Scriptures say, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. Your desire to send your child to college, your desire for you to go back to school, your desire to have that higher education, it is not going to come without challenges. Dr. King once said that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the time of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in the time of challenges and controversy. Where do you stand when you're challenged? Where do you stand when it's time to do controversial things to get that higher education? Higher education does not always come with a brick and mortar learning. Higher education comes with common sense and knowing and biblical understanding of how to use the blessing that God has given you. It's a blessing to be able to expound upon something to help fellow man move toward their goal, to help fellow man to accomplish the things that they seek that are important to them. I say this, the economics of education needs a willingness to understand, an opportunity to comprehend an affordable way, the resilience to keep going when those challenges come. Your child is going to be challenged to find a way to get to college. Your child is going to be challenged to find a way to maintain those grades. Your child is going to be challenged to find a way to have a degree that is marketable for their future. So don't take away the challenges that they may face, because those challenges will give their ultimate measure of them. Too many times we want to take away the challenges that our children face when it's time for them to go to school. We want to make it easy for them. But when they get out in the world and they have to deal with the challenges of understanding finances, deal with the challenges of understanding how to make educated decisions when it comes to financial matters. When we took away the challenges when it came for them to make a decision on what school to go to, when we took away the challenge of them to understand how to estimate the cost, we may be doing a disservice to them down the road. Think about it. Now, what's the K for? Well, the K is that we have to be humble enough to seek wisdom. Now, I know you may say, no, wait a minute. He said he was using work as an acronym. Work is spelled W-O-R-K. Humble doesn't start with a K. Well, it all depends on where you look. We said the root word. See, humble is a way of breaking down, removing oneself. Well, the root word for humble comes from a Greek word called kenosis. That is K-E-N-O-S-I-S, kenosis. And kenosis is an emptying of emptying of oneself spiritually, of emptying a something, so that way you can put something of greater value in. We have to go through a process of kenosis, of emptying ourselves of what we thought would be the right way when the game has changed. Empty ourselves. And you know what the main thing that we have to empty ourselves of? And oftentimes that is pride. We have to empty ourselves of pride and empty ourselves of being worried about what people think. I know we may say, what would the neighbors think? What would my friends think? What would the people think at church and all? What would they think if my child goes to a junior college? What would they think about if my child has to get a job just to afford for them to go to school? What would they think about me? You know, at some point in time, we got to go through a process of kenosis and understand, not just for ourselves, but also for our children and our children's children, that a dream delayed is not a dream denied. How is it not denied? It's because we continue the process. Oh, I'm not saying push the dream off so far where you never attain it. No, 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 no. What I'm saying is this, is that when those challenges come, it may require you to do things that are called thinking out of the box. Thinking out of the box, understanding that sometimes when it comes to getting that higher education, there is more than one way to skin a cat. When they tell you that this is what you got to pay, don't be so quick to put yourselves in a financial bind today that you are no good financially for your future. Because the rules of the game have changed. For parents, grandparents, I say, if at all possible, and it depends on your financial situation, if at all possible, let you co-signing on a student loan, let that be the very last thing you do. Now, before you do that, set some priorities and some parameters up for that person who's going to college. Okay, what are you going to do to cut the cost? Are you going to get a part-time job? Are you going to consider going to a junior college? Are you going to get your grades up high enough so that you can get grants? Are you going to write letters and essays to qualify for a grant, to get a scholarship? You know, are you going to do those things? Are you going to do community service that will, you know, be an assistance to your tuition? What are you going to do before I sign on the dotted line and mortgage my retirement and my Social Security and my tax refunds for you to go to school? Oh yes, we gotta listen here. You gotta hit them, and I'm going to tell you, because with the onset of privatization of industries, of what once were government programs, we see privatization coming up and now being turned over to big businesses. Their interest, their focus is not you. Their focus is on the shareholders, and I don't fault them for that, because when I own a stock, I want the financial manager of that stock or that corporation to put the business in the best light to improve my earnings per share. So if the company that owns your or contract for your student loan is a private organization, and remember, it may start off as a government organization, but the government sells our information. How many times have we seen that before? They sell it. Why do you think when you get a certain age, you start getting information about, let's say, here's a point. Why do you think when young folks, especially young men, when they get 18 years old, how do folks all of a sudden know that they're 18? Well, what's the one thing that every young man must do in this nation? They must sign up for what? Selective service. They must say, I am 18, I'm eligible to be drafted, should that come back into law. Well, what do they do with that? One way that the government makes money is that they sell that data, that information to corporations. And so, and credit card corporations, financial corporations buy the information and then market that demographic. Well, guess what? When you are in college, when you take out a financial loan, a student loan, that information is being sold. And when it's being sold to private companies that make it their business to acquire student loans, yes, they are looking at you as a way to help drive their business. So when we talk about the economics of education, it is not just the cost of going to school, it is the cost of staying in school, and it is the cost of paying for school when you come out. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have to make a part two, but I'll let you know if there's going to be a part two. But the key of it all is count the cost. That's why at our website, tsmitchell.com, when you go to the Education Center, you will see in there calculators. And one calculator that we have is called Estimating the Cost of Education. We will show you, walk with you about how many years before your child goes to college, whether it's 1 year, whether it's this year, or whether it's 10 years from now. What's the cost? What are the number of years before that child goes to college? What is the annual cost of the institution? How do you gather that information? Well, do you contact us? We have the programs, the financial reports from each and every in university in this country. And we look at their most reported tuition, including room and board, to see what it would cost to go to that school. And then we also talk about what about the cost of inflation, for that child to go to school for 2 years or for 4 years. Calculate it. Consider what's the savings that you have now. Do you have savings now or do you not have savings? We have to put that into the picture. And then what about, are you making enough money to cover the cost of a loan? How much money do you need to save? The focus will be, see how much you can do on your own without relying on student loans, without relying on scholarships, grants, and anything else. And then once you see what you can do, now you know where you stand. Too many times when we don't look at the economics of education, we really don't understand where we stand. So we have to have a willingness, an opportunity, a resilience, and a kenosis, the humbling of oneself to understand the economics of education. When we do that, we can begin to accept the challenge and controversy that presents us to enable us to produce ultimate, true measure, young men and young women who are prepared for a financial future without being enslaved to financial indebtedness. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's been my pleasure to provide you with this segment of Power Over Tomorrow, understanding the economics of education. Here on Power Over Tomorrow, we extend the opportunity and invitation to you to contact us directly by Facebook here on Power Over Tomorrow, by Twitter at TS Mitchell Power. And we also say contact us on our website, tsmitchell.com. Sign up for our free financial newsletters. Download our financial apps to your smartphones, your Apple and your Android phones. And also continue to shoot us your questions, your comments, and your concerns that you may have. Listen, let your family, your friends know. And I even say this, even let some of your enemies know. Because once they see how good you are to them, in spite of who they are, they may turn around and be the people that they need to be. Ladies and gentlemen, remember this. In your walk of life, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind forever be at your back. May the sun shine upon you with his warmth, and may the rain fall upon you ever so gently. Until the next time when we can cross each other's path, may the God of heaven hold you in the hollow of his hands. I am Tyrone T.S. Mitchell. This has been Power Over Tomorrow. Source Nation, SRN Live TV, family and friends. Be well, be blessed, and be your best.